Welcome, everybody, to the Redzone Report right here on the Built in Buffalo YouTube, Facebook, and X channels. I am your host, Izzy, and we are back for another episode. Today, we are discussing the defense. What is it? Because we've been running a 4-3 defense that operated mostly out of a 4-2-5 for the last 9 years, and we're supposed to be switching to a 3-4. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Welcome, everybody. I'm again your host, Izzy, right here on the Built in Buffalo YouTube channel, Facebook, X, and YouTube, obviously, if you're on YouTube. Thank you for being here with me today. We are discussing this new defense because a lot of fans and myself have been confused as to what's going on with the Buffalo Bills defense. The draft was mostly defense again. Our first 2 picks were defense. Then we drafted 2 guys on offense, and then we went back to the defensive side. And we took almost exclusively defense in this draft. We drafted a punter, we drafted a wide receiver, we drafted a tackle, and we drafted a guard. Again, this year we drafted 2 corners, just like last year. We drafted Hairston, and we drafted Dorian Strong, who God bless him, and hopefully his recovery goes well and he can play again. But if not, God bless him, and hopefully the man can recover and have a normal life and use his degree that he achieved from the University of Virginia Tech. But the Bills reloaded the cupboard at corner. They went and they got another edge rusher, and they went and got a linebacker, and they got a steal of a safety in the 5th round. So we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills defense. Like we talked last week about the draft class itself. Today we'll be talking about some of the draft picks, but we'll be talking about them more in the context of the defense and how it should shake out, because we didn't draft a nose tackle. We did draft a defensive tackle out of Penn State, but we drafted 0 nose tackles. And so that being said, some Bills fans are concerned that the 3-4 defense that we are trying to run is not going to work. And so before I get into the comments are humming, so let's go ahead and address you guys, because you guys are some of my favorite people. Before the show even started, when this thing got scheduled, my man Kim Boomhauer came in at 5:05 p.m. saying, "Happy Sunday, Izzy. Happy Sunday, Kim." Always being here for me. I don't know if you're watching right now, but if you aren't, I get it that you dropped this earlier. And if you just dropped it earlier because you saw that I posted it, then thanks for doing that too. But we got Robert Hall in the building. What's up, my brother? What's good, my brother? Hey, life's good. Went to church this morning, spent some time with the Lord. Did some praying. My spouse is in Texas with my girls, not all my children. 2 of my children are here with me. My daughter's husband is in the Air Force now, and he is graduating from basic training this week. And so they are in Texas to go to his basic training graduation. My sons were unable to go. One of them is dog sitting for them because my daughters, they both live together. They're twins. They're 23 and they have their own apartment with their 2 dogs. And so my youngest son is watching their dogs, and my older son lives here with me already. And in the summertime, my youngest lives here, but he's, again, dog sitting. And so I am both alone and by myself this week. So the show is extra necessary, but life is good. They arrived in Texas just fine. Next week, we'll be hitting up some amusement parks. And the week after that, for Memorial Day weekend, we'll also be hitting up some amusement parks. So yeah, it's going to be a fun time. I might not be able to do a show the next 2 weeks, so let's get this done. Let's do it. Now, My man El Barca Boy. Go Bills, absolutely. Robert Hall back in the building with Mafia. Let's go. You see the hat, baby. You see it. Go Bills from El Barca again. Sandra L. King on the YouTube side and on the Facebook side. Izzy and Mafia, what up? What up, Izzy and Mafia? My man Jacob Spears in the building. Welcome back, Jacob. Love you, buddy. Hope you're doing good. Haven't heard from you in a little bit, but hey, we'll talk. My man Kim Boomhauer is here. Let's go. Oh, my man Robert Hall says it's just Bobby, so I will try to remember that. I'm terrible with names. Bobby. Okay. I could most likely remember that because my uncle Robert goes by Bobby as well. So, hey, Izzy, it's been a minute. Go Bills. Yes, Daniel Garies, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the show. I hope you guys enjoy it because we're going to dig into the weeds a little bit. Now, the Buffalo Bills are an interesting case this year because we had a longtime head coach in Sean McDermott, right? Obviously, he was a very successful head coach here. Some would argue he was not. I would disagree. I think he was a very good head coach, but I'm not here to argue semantics about head coaching and all that good stuff. Here to discuss the changes to be expected because the offense shouldn't change too much. It may get a little edgier. You know, the offensive coordinator is now the head coach, and now he has free reign to run his offense as he pleases. He doesn't have to take the lead of Sean McDermott anymore. I don't know how much influence Sean McDermott would have had. Maybe not directly play calling, but maybe giving him what he wants the next drive to look like, so on and so forth. And now that is up to Joe Brady. The defense is where the major change is because Sean McDermott has been our defensive play caller. He and Bobby Babich the last couple years have been that guy or those guys. And they ran a 4-3 base, which we rarely ran out of base. We ran out of 4-2-5 most of the time. So Taron Johnson saw the field about 70% of the time. Basically, he was a linebacker, which explains why his career has kind of slowed down the last year or two because he's hitting big guys. And so now he's going to the Raiders, and we'll see what happens there. But we've signed D. Alford, and then we drafted cornerback out of Ohio State, Davison Igbinosun, but then we also drafted out of where is Toriano? He is not on the website. What the heck is going on here? You know what? I have the names here. What am I talking? What am I doing? Toriano Pride Jr. We drafted. So we got some corners, and the Buffalo Bills, first round of the draft, we had questions, a lot of Bills fans doubting, and I can't say I blame them. I was doubting too. People were saying fire Brandon Beane, and I can't lie. I wasn't against what they were saying. I wasn't exactly for it either, but I could see their frustration and understand, how they came to that conclusion. But the Buffalo Bills went and they got some corners in the draft. Let's see where Toriano is. Nickelback. Toriano Pride Jr. Here he is. Out of Missouri, mostly a slot cornerback. ESPN has him listed as an outside corner, but he's most likely going to play in the slot. Solid pickup in the 6th round. I think the Bills killed day 3 of the draft. Day 2 was like, oh no. Day 1 was like, okay, we traded back and we had a feeling it was going to happen, right? So the rookies that we picked up for our defense are Zane Durant, defensive tackle out of Penn State, who is going to be a defensive end for us, most likely 5-tech or a 4-eye. 5-tech meaning you are lined up over the tackle, and then 4-eye meaning you're lined up in between guard and tackle, generally speaking, or just inside the shoulder of the tackle on the other side. That's probably going to be mishmash, depending on which side of the formation for the offense is the strong side. That'll determine, and the strong side means that the tight end is on that side. If you're running 2 tight ends, 1 on each side, then you're running the even front basically on offense, which means that there is no strong side, and the defense is most likely going to start running even as well. So you'll have your defensive ends inside the tackle, outside the guards, with your defensive nose tackle sitting directly over the center, and your outside linebackers, one probably playing off the line and one playing on the line, depending on if you're blitzing or not, or if you want to show blitz. Then you'll also have your two linebackers in the middle. Not a very complicated scheme, an odd front, but sometimes it'll look like a 4-3 when you have one of your outside linebackers, sitting back, looking like he may be dropping in the coverage, and he might be blitzing, and then you have the other guy who could drop back. So it gives you some exotic looks, the 3-4 defense. And we only have one nose tackle on the roster who I don't actually see as a nose tackle because he can move, is Deion Walker. He's 6'7". Most of your nose tackles are like 6'2", 6'3", like 320 plus. He meets the weight requirement, but he doesn't really meet the style of player. He's a penetrator. He's not a blocker eater. He doesn't do very good against blocks, but I guess nose tackle's job is to eat blocks. I don't know if that's the plan for him, but Deion Walker at the nose, and I'm seeing a lot of confusion from other fans as to why this is the case. You know what I'm saying? So let's see. Jacob Spears, go Sabres. Indeed. Sabres took that series in 6. It was beautiful. They decided that they were just going to not allow the Bruins to make the game a physical game. They decided that they were going to go and play, fast like they're supposed to because they're not the more physical team. And they just went around the Bruins, in every single time they won. And when they lost to the Bruins, they were losing because they were allowing the Bruins to dominate physically. And so what they do, they were like, nope, we're not taking this back to Buffalo. This is not going to be a 7-game series. We're just going to go ahead and, skate circles around you, kick your ass in your hometown. Pardon my French there. And take the series. So go Sabres. Let's go. I'm hoping that we see Montreal in the next round, but, it doesn't matter to me because I hope we win it all either way. And if you're going to win it all either way, then you have to beat good teams. So, yes, go Sabres and go Bills. Rookie camp is May 8th through the 11th. Okay, so I'll probably have to do a recorded show or something like that just to, cover what happened in camp. But I'll do what I can to make something happen. See, man, if we have a lights-out defense, we are going to be Super Bowl bound, no question. I agree, Bobby. It's a foregone conclusion if this defense can help up the offense. Because if you look last year in the playoffs, I know a lot of people blame McDermott and the defense for losing that game, and I couldn't do it. I had to put that on the offense. You gave up 5 turnovers, 12 points off those, and we lost by 3. That is one oversimplification. The other oversimplification is the defense allowed points. Well, the defense allowed, what was it, 20 points? Not without the turnovers. We lost 33-30 in overtime. 21 points, and then 12 points on field goals. If you give up a turnover in your own territory, and your defense stops the other team and only allows a field goal, that's a win. Okay, that's a win. Now, if you turn over at the goal line, someone fumbles it at the goal line, you got to stop them, right? But if you drop the ball at your own 35, they should get points. They should get 3. Every team should believe if our defense takes the ball away and we're on your 35, we're coming away with at least 3, right? And the Bills should feel that way too. So if you're going to apply that logic to us, you should apply it to them. The defense played decent enough in that Broncos game, but the offense turned the ball over way too much. And I know one of those turnovers was really not a turnover, but still 4 turnovers, where points are scored off of them is enough. And the last turnover didn't result in points. IGB for sure. Yes, Igbenogson, IGB for sure. I've been watching. Respect to McDermott. He did some great things, but this defensive scheme couldn't get it done in the playoffs. It couldn't for a lot of times. It should have that last game against the Broncos. And I think against the Patriots, our offense was just too much, right? We showed them in the regular season. They beat us the first time, and then we came back and we kicked their butts in the second time. They were up 21 on us, and then we just went on a, manhunt and just killed them. So the defense it had its moments, but I think that this was the healthiest our defense had been going into the playoffs outside of Max Hairston, and injuries during the game really cost us. Dane Jackson having to take a snap really cost us. That's more on Brandon Beane than Sean McDermott. But I have a hard time talking about that game just because of, how it ended. But, You know what? It is what it is. It's in the past. The Buffalo Bills have made the moves they've made. They're logical moves. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I can't argue with the logic behind it. So it is, it is what it is. In the words of Max Hairston, or not Max Hairston, Max Holloway. For real, Bean has done a pretty damn good job, especially trying to recover from the Diggs cap hit. Yes, he has. Now, we have had questions on the way because you don't know what's coming around the corner, and some of the moves he's made have been quite risky, and you just don't know if he's going to be able to recover from this move. But he felt he had to make this move, and then it resulted in something else, like the DJ Moore trade. I love the DJ Moore trade. I think that there was a issue between him and Williams over there in Chicago, and I don't think it was a personal issue. I think it was more of a clashing of generations issue, like Cam Newton and Steve Smith, that kind of deal. So I know Bean would trade out of the first round. I think everybody knew that. we all knew, but some people were really upset about it, even though they knew it was going to happen. Like, if you know something's going to happen, you just got to let it be. Dwayne Carter is muscling up. Brandon Bean said he started at 302 pounds. He was about 302, 305 pounds starting out. If he can get around 315, he can help in that rotation at nose. So, yeah, Deion Walker is losing weight and muscling up. That'd be nice, too, because I think he's going to be more of a 4-eye or a 5-tech, But if you're running the defense I think they're going to run, which is a very multiple 3-man front, right? You're not going to have a true nose, kind of like when we had Kyle Williams and Marcel Darius. Marcel Darius was the bigger man. It was no question about that. Like, Marcel Darius was like 320 pounds. Kyle Williams was like 310. Kyle Williams was not nose tackle size, but he was better equipped to play it. He was shorter and stouter. Darius was bigger, taller, and more of a penetrator. Kyle Williams was more of a space eater, and he was also more of a good use of hands type of player. Kyle Williams' hands were super underrated. I don't know if people know this, but Kyle Williams was just a monster with his hands, and that's why he, as a 5th-round pick, being drafted in the same year as a 1st-round pick in John McCargo at the same position, the same year that Mario Williams was drafted 1st overall from the same team as John McCargo, goes to show that John McCargo was kind of benefiting off the fact that he had Mario Williams there. And once that curtain was pulled, it was over. Can't wait to see the new defense. I can't either. And so the way I see this defense playing out, and I've heard some other people comment on this. I've seen I forget his name from Cover One, and I've seen Joe Marino talking about it, and I've seen the big O Jerry Ostrowski talking about it, and I've seen a lot of other YouTube guys talking about it. And so I was confused until I was able to listen to some of these guys talk and feel out scheme. And one thing that they continuously pointed out is that the personnel difference isn't going to be that crazy because we're going to be mostly in our 2-4-5, which is basically the same thing as a 4-2-5. Difference is the edges are standing instead of having their hand in the dirt. One puts his hand in the dirt, you're now in a 3-3-5. So 4-2-5, 3-3-5, 2-4-5. It's all about how many people have their hands in the dirt. But if you have Deion Walker, Ed Oliver, Rousseau, and Chubb, and these two guys have their hands on the ground, it's the same thing, basically. The only difference is one's standing, one's in a 3-point stance. That's the only real difference. The bigger difference is if you're in a 2-4-5, your edges can move around more. They can stunt easier. They'll have a faster step to the outside. Granted, they will be higher up. So offensive linemen, offensive tackles will be able to get their hands on them more readily. And so this is why I could see the exotic nature of what Jim Leonhard wants to do working here. He's going to bring back a little bit more of that Rex Ryan flair, because Rex Ryan ran a 3-4, but it was very exotic. A lot of stunts, a lot of movement on the line. They had Kyle Williams, an undersized nose tackle. They had Marcel Darius on the outside, a lot like Deion Walker's probably going to play. They had, other guys like big dudes. I forget who they were also on the line, but you had Mario Williams. You had Jerry Hughes. You had guys off the edge who could really play. And then you had a guy who's like Michael Hoyt, or Michael Hoyt is like him because Michael Hoyt comes after. Therefore, Lorenzo Alexander, the Lorax, predates him, who could move around and blitz and do all kind of fun stuff. But I also believe that Caleb Elarms-Orr, Dorian Williams, and Terrell Bernard can do that as well. The only thing is, I believe that Terrell Bernard is a little undersized for this defense. But if he's just shooting gaps, shouldn't be a problem. The thing is, this defense is likely not going to be a two-gap defensive line. What is two-gap? I'll explain. Nose tackle is a zero technique, right? So you have your gaps. You have your A gap, your B gap, your C gap. Or your nose tackle sits directly over the center. The A gap is on either side of the center. The B gap is on the outside shoulder of the guard. And then the C gap is outside of the tackles. Okay? A gap, B gap, C gap. Zero tech on the center. One tech or three tech sits on either side of the center. Five techs outside of that, and four eyes. One will line up outside shoulder of whatever tackle. The other will line up inside shoulder or directly over the tackle. Or excuse me, inside shoulder of the tackle. The other one will line up directly over. Your seven techs, technically, or C gappers, are going to be your edge rushers, which is also normal in a 4-3. The difference is you don't have that extra big body in the middle to eat blocks. Technically, we don't either, but there's going to be an extra guy in there. And so to explain this a little bit better, with a two-gap scheme, your nose tackle is going to go straight forward, basically, through either one of the A gaps or straight through the center. He's going to be just trying to create havoc right up the middle. And then your two defensive ends, or your five tech and 4-eye, are going to be trying to move within the B gap and the A gap. And sometimes they'll even try to get around the C gap if it's an outside run. But if it's an inside run, they'll probably try and still cover the B gaps while the nose tackle eats space, right? That's your two-gap scheme. You have one guy bull rushing, and you have two guys hitting gaps. When you stunt, your defensive linemen move, okay? So let's say you stunt your left defensive end inside. So instead of going through his normal B gap or C gap, what he's going to do is he's going to go around the nose tackle to the other side. And the nose tackle will, generally speaking, shift towards where he came from in a stunt. Or you can have an edge rusher stunt inside while the defensive end comes around the outside, like Eminem. Okay? So defensive end goes around the outside linebacker swoops in to hit the gap. Stunting is going to be a huge part of this defense. You're going to have guys blitzing as well. There's going to be a lot of blitzes. Jim Leonhard likes to run man because he likes to blitz. He was definitely very influential in this draft class, and I know a lot of people have a hard time grasping that because we drafted PJ Walker? TJ Parker. I'm terrible with names, guys. Drafted TJ Parker in the first round, who is a lot like Greg Rousseau and Bradley Chubb. He's more like Bradley Chubb than Greg Rousseau because he's not 6'7" like Greg Rousseau, 280. He's more like Bradley Chubb, like 6'4", 265. It makes sense if you think about it. Bradley Chubb is here on a 3-year deal. The Bills can get out of it after the second year, I believe. And you draft a player just like him to learn from him who can then grow behind Bradley Chubb. Not only that, but the part where people have a hard time grasping is that Jim Leonhard was at Denver, but he was not the defensive coordinator, right? So here's an explanation here for this. He was not the defensive coordinator. He was the pass game coordinator. He is a former safety of the Buffalo Bills, New York Jets, and played for one other team. Might have been Baltimore. But Jim Leonhard is now the defensive coordinator, right? So Vance Joseph was the actual DC in Denver. And so a lot of people were hoping that the Bills would go after a Nick Bonito type, like an R. Mason Thomas or a Cassius Howell, or, later on Barham from Michigan. Like Bills fans were hoping for that. Yakis. Bills fans were hoping for somebody like that. But they went and got themselves another Bradley Chubb type, which means that they still want a power rush from the outside, which is fine because guys like that can stop the run. Guy like Armish and Thomas and Cassius Howell are not very good against the run. Barham is better against the run. He's very raw prospect, though. Very raw prospect. I think he's going to be good, but it might take him a little bit more time to develop into that beast that he has the potential to be, because he's a very strong player, and he converts speed to power very well because he is quite fast, and he gets a lot of his power from his speed. So, that being said, you're going to see a lot of stunts from the edge rushers. And the good thing about Greg Rousseau in this defense is he played safety in high school. He played quarterback, I think it was, or wide receiver. He played wide receiver and safety. Originally, those were his positions. And then he grew out of those positions, obviously, because he's 6'7", 285 or 275 or whatever it is. He just grew up into a big boy that just naturally doesn't fit those spots anymore. He could have been a tight end, maybe. Maybe the hands ain't so great. So he moved over to edge rusher, and Bob's your uncle. But he still has the skill set to potentially cover down the field a little bit. Now, I don't expect him to cover, 30 yards down the field like Matt Milano used to do. I don't expect him to be dropping back into deep zone, but cover the curl flats, cover the hard flats, drop into, center field coverage, not deep center field, but the intermediate center field. Tight ends coming across, if we're in a zone, he can drop back there. There's a lot of interest in what this defense is going to do. And honestly, to be totally blunt with everybody, I don't know exactly if I'm correct or not. But this is what's been explained by people who know this defense better than I do. Know 3-4 better than I do. I can tell you about 4-3 all day, every day. In my learning of the NFL and my journey through X's and O's, I've seen more 4-3 than I've seen 3-4. The only 3-4 I really saw was Rex Ryan's, and it was so exotic I couldn't grasp it. I couldn't understand it. But we had Doug Marrone, who had his defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, ran a wide 9-4-3 defense. Then we had Sean McDermott, who ran, a very multiple 4-3 defense, mostly 4-2-5. Now we're going back to a 3-4, much more similar to Rex Ryan's, and I'm hoping that this time around I can grasp it better, because I like understanding what I'm watching. When I was younger, I didn't really care to understand. I just wanted us to win. Now I want to understand, because it helps me control my emotions about what's happening on the field better, right? If I know what's going on and I go, oh, okay, I see what happened here. They stunted Bradley Chubb inside. The guard was able to, get him. And so they were able to seal for the running back to, get to the outside. But luckily, Terrell Bernard was able to get out there and make the tackle. I want to understand what's going on. Okay, they broke up a 7-yard run, got the first down on third down. What broke down? I want to see it. And if it's, something that I can see and tell that it was our guy screw up, then I feel I reserve the right to be upset. But if it's just an awesome, magnificent play by the offense, especially if it's some trickeration, if they're moving people around and they're doing trick plays, fake jet sweep here, an actual jet sweep there, a flea flicker, and they're doing stuff, to try and confuse the defense. I get it. I get it. But still got to win the damn game. You still got to win the game. The game is on the line. And for heaven's sake, please stay on your assignments. I still believe in a lot of Sean McDermott's philosophies. Do your 111th. Do your job. That's a very Belichickian thing to say. Do your 111th is basically do your job. That's your 111th, is your job. You're a deep safety, you cover deep. Right? You're a nickel corner, you're covering the slot. Or you're covering a patch of grass in zone. This Bills defense is going to be very mobile. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces. There's going to be a lot of movement. And it may struggle at first, both due to terminology changes and due to players having to learn new assignments, right? Because the defense doesn't just change due to the amount of guys are in the front. It doesn't change just based on now this Greg Rousseau is standing up instead of having his hand in the dirt. The defense isn't just changing by having only 2 linebackers and sometimes not a nickel out there, two inside linebackers. And it's not just changing the fact that it's man to man. It's changing all those things simultaneously. The Bills want to run more man coverage now. This is the philosophy of Jim Leonard. He's a very man-centric guy. You put your safeties out there to do cleanup work, and you drive to the ball, right? You cover your guys, which is why they drafted Igbinosun, I believe, because they wanted a third type of cornerback, more of a mauler at corner than a pure speed guy like Max Hairston, who I expect to start and play most of the time. But also, if something happens to Max or Igbinosun, you still have the other guy. But we needed depth at this position. I know depth in the second round is hard to swallow, but did you want him to draft another Dane Jackson or go after another Levi Wallace? We don't have Sean McDermott coaching those guys up. Sean McDermott was a wizard with those types of guys. Like, we started a playoff game and almost beat the Chiefs with Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace starting for us. That's how crazy that was. Now, Dane Jackson fizzled out and just wasn't as good as he was because he got smoked in that playoff game against Denver. But when he first played for the Bills, it was serviceable, so much so that he got signed to the Panthers on a 2-year deal. He got cut after the first year. Obviously, the injury that he sustained in Buffalo beforehand was probably too much, and then he re-injured down in Carolina, comes to Buffalo, and I believe his time in the NFL is probably done. But somebody might sign him to a practice squad and hold on to him. I hope it's not us. I like Dane Jackson, the person, but the players, he's run his course here at Buffalo. He's also a zone corner in man. He gets cooked every single time. So he's not a fit for the scheme. Trey White, probably not a fit for the scheme either. Could he play man? Yes. Is that his best attribute? No. He is a zone in-phase cover cornerback. He's not very good bumping and running. Igbinosun is outstanding at that. He had some penalties in 2024, quite a bit. I think it was like 12 or 13. He had 4 this past year. 4. Most of his penalties came at the top of the route, meaning he wasn't getting flagged for like holding and getting too handsy at the point where you meet the receiver at the line of scrimmage. He was, not looking back for the ball when tracking the receivers. He was making careless decisions, or he wasn't developed enough in his position to be able to do that very well. So I see Igbinosun when we have bigger receivers, and I've said this already last show, when there's a bigger receiver core out there, right, and you need, Christian Benford and then a bigger guy to cover the other corner, you might see them kick Max Hairston inside on a slot. You may see him play more dime in those times. And when we're playing a team like the Eagles where they have a Devontae Smith, well, that's Max Hairston's job, because Devontae Smith makes cornerbacks like Igbinosun look slow, even though he's not. He makes those guys look slow. So the defense, very multiple, matchup friendly, and then also you're going to see a lot of movement, a lot of stunts at the defensive line. They're going to be pushing people around. They're going to be trying to confuse offensive linemen. They're going to do all kind of crazy stuff because they're not going to be a bend but don't break defense anymore. This defense is now a attacking front defense. We're going to try and get home with our front 5, not front 4 anymore, front 5. We're going to try and get home with those guys, and we're going to use our other guys to cover the tight ends, the receivers, and running backs at the backfield, while also occasionally blitzing. And when I say occasionally, I mean way more than McDermott did probably. And it also depends on personnel. If our guys aren't so good at blitzing, you may see them blitz less. If you have guys who are really good at blitzing, you might see them blitz more. But the Bills, I believe, have done a very, very good job at making sure that the cupboards are stocked, right? There were a few years here where we were looking at defensive tackle and saying, wow, like we have one dude signed after this year. Ed Oliver's the only guy under contract. Daquan Jones is out of here, unless we re-sign him or freaking Starlo Tulele at his time too. We had positions where we had no one. And now the cupboards are stockpiled on defense. So you have Greg Rousseau starting the first year of his 4-year deal. You have Bradley Chubb starting the first year of his 3-year deal. You have a rookie in Parker. You have another rookie at defensive tackle or defensive end now in Zane Durant out of Penn State, who he's a mover. He's a shuffler. He can get around. You have a safety in Jalen Kilgore who played a lot of slot. So if need be, he can move back into the slot. That's going to free up Jordan Hancock to move around as well. Those two players are going to be very influential on each other. Even though they play the same position, there may be times where you need two, of that type of guy out there. Maybe you got tight ends who need to be covered. Maybe you need one to blitz, one to cover somebody. Maybe you need someone to eat a block. You blitz them both. When the guy gets blocked, you can't block both of them. So this defense is going to be fun. I think fun is the correct word to use for this defense. I'm very optimistic about it, but I also don't know, and so I reserve the right to be a little to question it. You know what I'm saying? I think that questioning it is fair. Right? If you're not questioning it, then you're really not caring too much about the team. My man Bobby comes out. Can't wait to see the news D from me either. And Jerry was a dog. Jerry Hughes was an absolute monster in Rex Ryan's defense. He was an absolute monster. I mean, just crazy. Kilgore has also done some punt returning. He has. Kilgore has done some punt returning, as has IGB. But he was kind of thrown in there. Oh. Thank you, God. So they have guys who can return punts. Funny thing is, Skylar Bell hasn't returned punts. Doesn't mean he can't. But I've been hearing that Keon Coleman could return punts for the Bills this year. I've heard Khalil Shakir could retain that job, but I wouldn't want to do that. He's our main slot receiver. He has been our number one guy basically for the last 2 years. And while he shouldn't be a number one receiver, he's earned the right for that respect. And, you never know if Khalil Shakir takes a big jump. This is the first year of his 4-year contract. The cupboards are stockpiled, baby. They are stockpiled. We have 2 young safeties in Jordan Hancock and in Jalen Kilgore, who have both been drafted last year and this year. And then still young, Cole Bishop, who will be eligible for a contract extension after this year, who led the league in passer rating allowed among all safeties this past year. And then you go to cornerback, Max Hairston, Igbinosun, and then Toriano Pride Jr. Also, Benford just signed his deal. So we have 4 corners locked up for the next 4 years. One of those guys I named is a slot, but we also got D. Alford, who we locked up for 3 years. So our cornerback room is basically locked up for the next 3 years. We're pretty set at those positions now. I was not thinking in the same terms that Brandon Beane was thinking when he started putting this thing together. Now you look at linebacker. Linebacker for a lot of people was a big need. Terrell Bernard gets hurt often enough. Dorian Williams was banged up a little bit last year, but for the most part, he's been healthy. Matt Milano's out of here. He's more of a McDermott type of defense guy. Shaq Thompson could be a guy that to bring back. He was talking about wanting to get some money. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. So, he could be somebody who ends up back here on a, light priced deal. And the Bills might not be done adding players to this. They have a practice squad for a reason. But the starting defense to me is almost basically set other than the defensive line. Right, as of right now, it's TJ Sanders, Deion Walker, Ed Oliver. Behind them, Dwayne Carter, Fedarian Mathis, Zane Durant, Zion Logue, Tommy Aking Bisote. I could see us adding another defensive tackle. I could see us adding another guy. Dwayne Carter will probably kick in right behind Deion Walker. I also know Fedarian Mathis is probably going to be better fitted in this defense. He's 312 pounds. He could be a guy who kicks into the nose tackle spot. So you could have 3 nose tackles on this roster, or one of those guys goes to the practice squad. But also Zion Logue is another big guy who can clog the middle, 6'6", 325. So we have some big tackles who could potentially be nose tackles. Deion Walker, Fedarian Mathis, Zion Logue, Dwayne Carter's putting on weight. You have the outside guys. Zane Durant, Tommy Aking Bisote, who is 6'4", 316, so he could be a guy. I wouldn't necessarily count on it, but could be a guy. He's a 2025 7th round pick. So, yeah, this could be very interesting. You just never know where the diamonds in the rough would come from. Linebacker being, a spot where confusion, again, with the injuries to Bernard and Williams last year, having Joe Andreessen, Jimmy Charlo, and Keontae Jenkins as the only options behind them was kind of concerning. So what do? 4th round, you draft Caleb Elarms, which some people had with a 3rd round grade. Got him in the 4th. Skylar Bell, people had 2nd round grades on him. Got him in the 4th. So the 4th and 5th round were really kind of a masterclass for Brandon Beane, especially on the defense. I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball here as well. Cole Bishop, Jalen Kilgore, Geno Stone, DeMar Hamlin, Jordan Hancock, Sam Franklin Jr. I don't see DeMar Hamlin making the team. And I love DeMar Hamlin's character. I love DeMar Hamlin's, demeanor. But I'm going to be totally honest. He's probably the odd man out. He might be able to, get up on the practice squad. Somebody else might want to bring him in. I don't see a active roster spot for him. And looking at, cornerback, you have David Igbinosun, and you have Christian Benford, you have Max Hairston, freaking Toriano Pride, Darryl Porter Jr., Takori Couch, MJ Devonshire. The Bills needed to draft some corners. They just did. They needed to draft some corners. That nickel, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Kilgore, and D. Alford is who they have on ESPN.com. I think it'll be D. Alford, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Jalen Kilgore. I think that drafting Jalen Kilgore also was the perfect time to draft a corner or safety, when you have a guy like C.J. Gardner-Johnson on this team. It's going to be fun. See, Landon Jackson is Bill's only player considered a defensive end. As of right now, he's the only one on the active roster as a defensive end. But if you're truly running a 3-4, you know what it is. I mean, unless you want to call those positions 4-eye, 5-tech, and nose tackle, it is what it is. Rumor is Javon Solomon is better suited for this defense. So Brandon Beane actually said that the day he drafted Javon Solomon. So after that draft 3 years ago, Javon Solomon got drafted by the Bills, and they were like, look, we couldn't pass him up. He was just too good to pass him up. He's sitting there. He had 16 sacks his last year at Troy, but he's not a hand in the dirt kind of guy. And so if they still believe in him, and if he can prove them right, which I hope he can, because he's now in a defense that he's going to be more familiar with, Javon Solomon could be a piece that really turns out to be, better late than never. Now, we got some people coming on here. The Bills should have grabbed the disruptive run-stuffing nose tackle Caden McDonald out of Ohio State. I don't disagree with you here. He's who I wanted. I really wanted Caden McDonald. To me, this is intentional. And here's why. If they really needed a nose tackle, they would have got one. There was a bunch of nose tackles available, and they chose not to. So I have no idea. But I agree with the point. Like, if they're running a traditional 3-4 defense, you got to have that big fat bastard in the middle. You got to have him. You got to have that 325-plus dude. We have a couple of guys who are big like that, but they're not nose tackles. They're not space eaters. They're not wide. Deion Walker is big and tall, 6'7". Like, he's got some width to him, but he's not a teapot. He's a jug. See, Houston Texans grab him on the next pick at 36. We can chalk up that Houston game as a loss. Remember, Josh Allen was lucky to finish that Texans game. He suffered 8 sacks, just saying. I don't disagree with that point either, but I also don't know how much influence Sean McDermott was on the offense. So there are things that can be done to mitigate that. Question is Joe Brady the guy to do that, to mitigate that? See, DeMar, great story, but man, not good enough. So I would go as far as to say that DeMar Hamlin is a good enough safety to roster on some teams. He's a good enough safety to play, use some downs. He is not good enough to remain on his team. With the firepower we have now as safety, he's not better than Cole Bishop, obviously. He's not better than C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's not better than Geno Stone. And he's probably not better than Jalen Kilgore. And the last safety spot is going to go to Sam Franklin Jr., special teamer. Doesn't really play defense. They have to give him the safety designation because they don't have a ST player designation. Jordan Hancock just had shoulder surgery. Another reason to draft Jalen Kilgore and Toriano Pride Jr. Thanks for addressing this. Could you read the second part of my comment, please? Let me see. Yeah. We can talk. I did read the second part of that. This part here. Andreessen and Charlo should be playing more this coming season. They are great ball hawks. We can't continually have pretty good players not playing. We underutilize Tyrell Shavers and Khalil Shakir in their first years. Agree with that. The problem is the depth in front of them, right? But I expect them to see the field some because Terrell Bernard gets hurt. He does. He gets hurt. So I think that Tyrell Shavers, his first year, I don't think he was developed enough, but he earned it last year. And he saw the field quite a bit. He saw a lot of snaps. He just didn't see a lot of targets. And so I think that if he didn't get hurt this year, you'd see a bump in his targets because I think that his play itself was better than the play of Keon Coleman. Even though statistically Keon put up better numbers, you look at all the play, the whole picture, pass blocking. You know, he's on the inside behind the offensive line. And then what happens? He goes out there and he's blocking and then coming off to run a route. He scored a touchdown off one of those plays before. Like Khalil Shakir's first year, he should have saw the ball more. But again, I think that's more of a Josh thing. Josh takes to some players slower than others. But once he forms that bond, it seems to be kind of a permanent thing. Like with Diggs, it wasn't because Diggs, right? But with Cole Beasley, once they got locked in, they were locked in. Once he got locked in with Khalil Shakir, they're locked in now. Once he got locked in with Gabe Davis, locked in, right? He trusts those guys. So he had to build that trust with Khalil Shakir, especially when Khalil Shakir joins the team when we have Diggs, Davis, and, Sanders at the time. All right, so he was the fourth guy down the pecking order at best. But when he saw the field, he made some plays like that crazy catch in Pittsburgh between three defenders. He just got up in the air and caught that. Like I'm a big fan of that. But Shaver's blocking is just outstanding, and he's willing. Like he's a guy who had to earn his way on this team. Undrafted rookie free agent, never gave up on himself, continually persevered, gave his all, and in the end got hurt because of that. And now he's recovering, and he probably won't be able to play again until his age 28 season. He was 26 last year. He's going to be 27 this year, meaning if he doesn't get to play this year at all, he won't be playing again until he's 28, right? So he had to slow play getting to this point, and then he gets hurt. His first year making the freaking roster. That hurts. However, the story before that is still freaking awesome. It's still awesome. Like, if you don't believe the story that Tyrell Shavers spent 3 years on the practice squad and then finally goes out and just shuts everybody up, earns his roster spot, and then stays. He made the 53. People are like, all right, Shavers might get cut. The 53 is never final. No, he was on the team the whole year. I was so happy for the kid. I can say kid. I'm at least 14 years older than he is. So there's that. But man, like very, very happy for the kid. But now I'm sad for him because he did have to go through that, and now he's going to wait till he's 28. Yeah, thanks for addressing this. Could you answer that one? People have asked that Bean doesn't like nose tackles. I wonder for some fans have heard that Bean may have said he doesn't believe in the nose tackle. So I've never heard Brandon Bean say that. I think Brandon Bean drafts mostly for the position. He was part of the team that drafted Star Lotulelei. You know, granted, Star Lotulelei played one tech and not zero tech, but a one tech can usually pretty easily slide into the zero. You know, a guy like a Kyle Williams can slide in there. Jeez, my nose is itchy. These allergies are killing me. So I don't know how true that is, but it's really good. Shavers was phenomenal run blocking. He was absolutely phenomenal run blocking. And he was phenomenal on the tush pushes. And he was phenomenal basically playing tight end at times because our boy Kincaid was hurt often enough. And so to not give away the fact that we were not sending him out on a route, Shavers got in there at times at tight end. Shavers is the best wide out in running blocking, hands down. He is. On this team, he's absolutely the best blocking receiver. Now, he's when we say that, like, the kid's good. The kid's good. There's no arguing that. Tyrell Shavers is a very, very good blocking receiver, and he's got good hands. Route running could use more polish, but he's got good hands. Remember, Shavers tore his ACL in the Jacksonville game in the second quarter and played the whole game still. What a warrior. Yeah, what a freaking dog, dude. That dude's a manimal. He ain't fully man and he ain't fully animal. He's a manimal. That man can play. So I was very pleased with what we got out of Tyrell Shavers. This defensive show is turn to the offense quite a bit, but that's cool. I covered what I really wanted to on the defense. So, being interactive is really my main goal of this show. So anybody who's watching this show, just understand my main goal is almost always to be interactive with you guys. If you guys have questions, I want to answer them the best I can. If I don't know something, I will usually tell you I don't know, or I will sit here with it like a freaking Rubik's Cube and try and figure it out, just twisting and turning until the colors line up. We also lost Gabe in that Jacksonville game. Like, we took some damage in that Jacksonville game. And Gabe was starting to come on a little bit. Gabe's always been a good run blocker, but he was a draft pick, so he always got his opportunities. Khalil Shakir was always going to get his opportunities so long as he worked hard and showed progress. Tyrell Shavers had to get that out of the mud. Out of the mud. So this year, back to the defensive stuff, I'll try and cover my concerns. Right. My concerns as of right now are mostly injuries and nose tackle. Not sure we need a proper nose, but it is what it is. Ed Oliver's coming off an injury. He played our last game last year, so I don't know if he's still injured or if he's rehabbing or had a surgery. Dwayne Carter coming off a surgery last year. His season was done before it started. Michael Hoyt coming off the Achilles and Landon Jackson coming off of the ACL. Some concern there. Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard being nicked up last year, I think they'll be fine, but we do have some depth behind them now, and I'm okay with that. Bradley Chubb played all last year. He played decent last year on a really, really piss-poor Miami Dolphins defensive line. He still got his. The secondary, I'm not really that worried about other than Maxwell Hairston. And, of course, the personality, and personal being that is Dorian Strong. Max Hairston, being injured last year was a concern. He is a smaller corner. It's going to be a concern. This is part of why most teams don't draft smaller corners. You look at guys like Pat Surtain, guys like, Kyer Elam, who we drafted in the first round, and Christian Benford. They're bigger guys. You're seeing bigger corners coming out now. The smaller guys you usually see play in the slot, like like D. Alford. Some teams like even a big slot, though, like a Jalen Kilgore or a Taron Johnson, who was like 190, 195. He was a bigger nickel. The Bills defense have some players coming off injury, and that's my big concern for the most part. The defensive line, I think they'll sort that out, and free agency ain't over. We still got time. See, bro, unfortunately, Gabe is a constant injury concern last 3 years. Got to move on. I know. I do love Gabe Davis though. Like he's one of my favorite players as a wide receiver 3 or 4. Right? As a wide receiver 2, wasn't very fond of him. He gave you the same production as a wide receiver 2 that he did as a wide receiver 3 or 4. So just make him a wide receiver 4. He's still going to get you 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. Leave him where he's at. But I guess you have to show progress. But you don't have to show progress. If you just play your game, then you go to Jacksonville, doesn't work out there, you come back, you get paid what you get paid. But these, wide receivers 3 and 4, they're getting paid now. Christian Kirk broke that bank that 1 year going to Jacksonville. Then they paid Gabe Davis 3 years, $39 million, and they cut him after he got hurt. Who was signed to be our nickel package corner? So we already have that. We have D. Alford, and we drafted Toriano Pride Jr. So those guys right there are your nickels. Also, Jalen Kilgore and C.J. Gardner-Johnson can both play in the nickel. We have other safeties. It just depends on how they decide to mix and match the players. Because, again, this is going to be a very multiple, very hybrid 3-4, 2-4-5 defense. The Buffalo Bills are going to be running. And it's going to be very interesting because you're going to see players in places where you're like, why is he there and not over there? And it's mostly going to be with the front 7, the linebackers and defensive linemen. The corners are most likely going to be lined up over their target. But you're going to see the safeties, 2 high, 1 high, both of them down, crashing in. Like the safeties are going to be crucial to this defense. The Jags were playing cutthroat. They injured Gabe on purpose. It felt like that they did. Because he went low on Gabe. That was dirty. See, we have some bad luck, ridiculous off-field injuries last year. Need better luck this season. Yeah. And the training staff's got to get better. Granted, this is the training staff that saved the life of DeMar Hamlin, if I'm correct. But, yeah, that was one of those things on that checklist that came out of bad things about the team. So, yeah. What's the status on cornerback safety Dorian Strong? He had neck surgery or upper back surgery. He had surgery on his upper spine, and we still don't have an update as to how his football career could continue or not. So prayers for him. I'll say a prayer for him at the end of this. I started going to church 4 weeks ago, and I haven't stopped since. So praise be to God. And I have to learn to start praying more. But again, 4 weeks, started to learn, getting into it. We'll say a prayer for him. Kilgore was a steal for sure. Absolute steal. Should have been gone in the second round. We should have took him in the second round. He was at practice with a neck brace. At least he was at practice. So hopefully there's some hope for him because he played good. And then he got hurt. My concern is good cornerback depth. I think we have depth now with IGB on the team now, and Toriano Pride can play inside and out. Most likely going to play inside, but yeah, for sure. Thanks for addressing this. You're very welcome. You asked some pretty good questions. My little bro, thanks for coming to visit me today, brother. Love you. Go Bills. You're kind of here at the end of the show, though, because I'm getting ready to sign off. So, guys, we have discussed the defense. We've discussed some of the offense. We've discussed some of the great stories of the Buffalo Bills. So now I am going to bow my head and pray, and you may too, for the health and welfare of this team and, more importantly, Dorian Strong's recovery. So, here we go. Heavenly Father, I come to you to pray today that you bless this team with good health. You bless all the fans with good health. You bless everybody with good health. But I want to pray more directly for the Buffalo Bills, Bills Mafia, the coaching staff, that this team is healthy and that this team is able to put together a good season win a championship. Even more directly, I want to pray for the health and well-being of Dorian Strong, cornerback who the Buffalo Bills drafted last year from Virginia Tech, who injured his neck early in the season, and his football career is on the line. And if it is your will to save his career, Lord, please do so. And if it is your will to have him do something else, with the church or not, it'd be nice if he did it without having to have his neck bother him for the rest of his life. Please, Lord, address these issues for us. I know you have bigger things to worry about than football. I know you have bigger things to worry about than a lot of things. But this is what I ask of you today. In the mighty name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. Amen, guys. And I'm going to end it like always. Be good, do good. God bless. Go Bills, baby.